Hi everybody, Grace here, and let's get started on learning the melody for Caro mio ben. So hopefully you've already watched the how to learn the rhythm of Caro mio ben. That's in lesson 1, so this is lesson 2. So if you haven't already done that, please go and check that out because that's super helpful. I wrote in some of the same things that Brandon did with the way that he works on rhythm, which is writing in all of the beat marks in each measure, because that helps me just stay on track with where I am in the measure, which beat I'm on, because sometimes you can get a little bit lost. So in terms of melody, obviously we're starting to come into putting pitch to everything. So things like what the key signature is starts to matter. I'm going to be working on the E flat major version of Caro mio ben. Hopefully that doesn't disappoint too many of you who are working on it in C major, but luckily I'm going to be using movable do. So I don't know if you're super familiar with movable do, or hopefully that is something that you have already worked on. Okay, so movable do, I mentioned, is when the tonic is always do. So, you know, if it's in G major, G is do. If we're in E flat major, E flat is do. Whereas in fixed do, C is always do. So hopefully that'll be helpful to those of you who are working with the C major version of this. You could just use the same syllables, but you're working in C major instead of E flat major. Okay, so like I said, we're in E flat major in this piece, and that means we have B flat, E flat, and A flat. And if you just kind of scan through, let me get a little bit closer here. I like to, when I'm looking at a piece for the first time, just kind of get a sense of what the melody looks like. You know, you could see that it stays relatively in the middle voice. It stays on the staff for the most part. The highest note that it goes up to is an F, which happens a little bit later in the B section. Right over here is the highest note in the piece. The lowest note in the piece is an E flat, so the tonic is the lowest note. And like I said, you're just kind of scanning to see where there might be any trouble parts. But this piece is fairly straightforward, which is why we chose it, because the melody isn't overly complicated. And it's very singable, so it's a beautiful song. There's a reason why this piece gets done a lot, especially for beginner singers. I know I sang this in high school. It's one of the first pieces that I ever learned in Italian. So yeah, so we're just looking for all of the things that music tells us to do, right? Let's look for dynamic markings, and as you can see, I highlight the dynamic markings and any other diacritical marks. So the dynamic markings, you could see it starts piano. As we go through the piece, we have a crescendo here in the B section. We have a forte marked. We have an accent mark on this high note here. Then we have another kind of hairpin happening. So yeah, just getting a sense of, you know, how this should be sung, or, you know, at least what the editors thought that it should sound like musically. So yeah, that's the first step, is marking your music. And it may look a little bit, you know, colorful, and it is. It's just to help your eye be drawn to the important aspects of the music. You don't want to miss the fact that, you know, the editor or the composer wanted you to sing this forte, because that's important. That's almost as important as, you know, what note is being sung is how they want it to be sung. So you want to be as true to the music as possible. So hence why there's all of the markings. So let's just get started. I have a piano here. I have a beautiful Steinway here at Utah Opera. We're very lucky to have a couple of those. And if you have your own keyboard, that's awesome. If you only have like a keyboard app, that's also great. You know, luckily this piece isn't super rangy, so it's not like you're gonna run out of notes or anything. You don't need an 88 keyboard to be able to play this. Yeah, so let's just jump right into it. So usually the first step in the process is just playing the notes and singing along. I luckily have a little bit of piano experience, so that is helpful. But like I said, this piece is not super hard. So if you know how to read music, and you even have a very basic knowledge of what the notes are on the keyboard, you'll be able to play this. And even if you go at a painfully slow tempo, that is fine, because the most important part when you're, you know, this first step is just learning the notes and just figuring out where they lie in your voice. So let's get started with that. And I'll just start with the A section. So from measures 5 to 13. And I'm going to do it out of time. I'm just going to sing it on a neutral syllable. I'll sing it on La. And yeah, like I said, this is just for familiarizing myself with the notes, okay? So it starts on an E flat. So that's the whole first A section. And yeah, just doing it out of context, just to feel where everything is. And, you know, making sure that you're getting all of those leaps. Oops. Oh, God. I promise I'm decent at piano. So yeah, that's the A section. Let's do the same thing for the B section. So that's the B section. And you may notice that in the B section, we have some natural signs on the A's, which are normally flat in E flat major. And that's because in the B section, we've moved to the fifth scale degree and moved into that key area. So we're now in B flat major, which happens a lot, especially in more classical pieces where the B section will be in the dominant key of the tonic. It's just to, like, you know, it's just a little switching it up, and it's a different feeling. But that's why there are those A naturals. And I'll explain soon that with the movable Do, I changed B flat to Do, because there's no point in singing this section as if it were in E flat major, because it's not. Okay, so now let's do the final section, which is the A prime section, starting on the second half of measure 22. Okay, so we've sung through the piece on La, and that is the first step. Now, the next step is writing in, and I've already done this, obviously, but writing in your solfege syllables. And maybe it would even work for you to do the other way around, because some people learn better with solfege, especially if you don't have a super proficient piano level. So you might, switch these steps around. But as you can see, I wrote in all of the syllables. Starts on do, and obviously do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do being the first level of the scale, going all the way up to the top. So that would be my next step is singing on solfege. And you can do the same thing where you keep it out of time. You don't need to confuse the mind with having multiple things to do. Break it down into simpler steps first, and then we could start to merge everything together with the rhythm. Okay, so let's go through this and sing it on solfege. Like I said, I renamed B flat as do for the B section, and that's because B flat for a second, for several measures, becomes do. It puts on a little hat that says do. So that's why I have that whole section, as maybe it'll sound a little bit weird because all of a sudden E flat is no longer the do, but I promise it'll make sense. I feel that it helps more when I am oriented in the right key. Okay, so let's do the same thing where I'll just sing each section, and that'll just be easier to break it down that way. Okay. Awesome. So that's the A section. Let's move into the B section. And like I said, B flat is now an imposter, and it is now do. B section. And then we're gonna creep right back into E flat major. We're going to go back home. So E flat will be the do again. Do, ti, la, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, re, sol, do, fa, mi, re, do, do, fa, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, fa, sol, la, sol, fa, mi, do, ti, la, sol, do, mi, re, do, do. Awesome. So that's the piece in solfege. And if you've already done that, you've already done a whole lot, and you're well on your way to knowing this piece really well. And I promise that doing all of this, painstaking, tedious work will pay off in the long run, because you're helping to put the piece into your throat. Because unlike, we can't see our instrument when we're singers. Pianists, they need to have fingering. They need to know exactly where everything's going. And it's kind of the same thing for us. We need to figure out where everything is in our throat and work it in. So this is all really important work. So the next step that we can do is we can start to merge the rhythm and the melody. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by count singing. And if you're not familiar with count singing, it's when you literally are just counting the beats as you sing. So since this piece is in 4/4, you're going to be singing 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. And that's all of the E and a is just to subdivide all of the 16th notes that happen in between. So this piece goes at quarter note equals 60. Yeah, quarter note equals 60. So let's try to do a little bit slower than that. Okay, so I just had to go to my metronome app because I can't use it at the same time as I'm recording this. And I needed to get quarter note equals 40, which is around here. So we're gonna start to internalize that. And then we're gonna start singing, and we're gonna, I'll demonstrate. So if you aren't 100% sure how this is gonna go, just pay attention to how I do it, and hopefully it'll become more clear. Okay, this is the A section. This is why the tempo needs to be a little bit faster. Okay, so that was the A section. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. You're literally just singing and counting at the same time. And it helps to just feel how long everything is and where the beats line up and all of that. Okay, let's do the B section. So this starts on beat 3. And you may have noticed that when I need to take a breath, I shorten the beat a tiny bit. Okay. T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the. Okay, so that was the B section. Let's finish it out and do the A prime. T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and a 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the. Great. So that is how you do count singing, and you know, it can be super informative because it'll keep you honest and help you to observe rests that are in the music, because I know sometimes I have a habit of singing over the beat when, you know, there's a rest marked, and that's what the composer wanted you to do. So even going through that, for me, I was like, oh yeah, I should stop singing here because there's a rest. Let me get a sip of water. Okay, so we can do that again at a slightly faster tempo. Well, we could do that at around 60 because this is a slow enough piece that it's not going to be overwhelming to amp it up. Okay, so that is where 60 is. So let's just go through the whole piece. We'll do it on count singing, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and T and the 4 and the 1 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and the 2 and the T and the 4 and the 1 and So I was kind of accidentally doing some of the rhythm markings, which, you can take this totally, you don't necessarily have to observe everything right away. But just for the sake of getting the rhythm in, I don't think it hurts to start observing all of the ritardando and the, when you have to hold it, when you have a fermata on measure 29, for example. So if you were like me and skipped a step, that's okay, because it's natural. It's part of the rhythm is to observe all of these markings. Oops. So that is a great intermediary step in between, where you're marrying the rhythm and the melody. And the next thing that you can do is sing it on la and do it with the rhythm. So observing everything, observing the ritardandos, the fermatas, all of these things. And you don't have the count singing anymore to kind of keep as a pulse, which helps for me, and I'm sure it'll help for you too to have that pulse. But eventually you're going to not be able to do this when you're when you're singing this song. So start to do it without having the beat like plunked out for you. So yeah, now we're just gonna sing the song on la, because we're not bringing the language into it just yet, because that's for another time. So let's just sing it on la, and we'll do it as rhythmically accurate as possible without having to force ourselves to count sing. So we've graduated to just singing on la. Okay, oops. And we'll do it at the same tempo of 60. Okay, so this is the measure of... Okay. Awesome. So that's pretty much it. The only other step is kind of adding in more of the dynamic markings, which I was already starting to do. But again, you don't necessarily need to do that right away. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think the melody is really important, and learning that and getting it in your voice is really important. And then eventually you're going to start interpreting this. And that way you'll be able to put more emotion behind all of the sudden crescendos, and there'll be more of a motivation for your dynamic markings, because that's all dynamic markings are, is just, it's interpreting the music. Because obviously you can sing it straight, but that would be boring. You need to infuse some emotion with it, and with emotion comes all kinds of things. It comes crescendos, it comes sudden softness, so that will help too with your dynamics and all of those things, all of the musicality aspects of singing this piece. So thanks so much for following along and learning the melody to Caro Mio Ben. I hope that was very helpful, and maybe you learned some new techniques that you can apply to this song and any other song that you want to learn, because we all have a lot of time on our hands these days. So if you have any further questions, you can go to Utah Opera's website and click on the Ask a Singer tab, and we'll be happy to talk with you if you need any more information. But hopefully that'll give you enough to get to work. So happy practicing. Bye.